together visually, from my count, that is going to be a DP class. Can you report on any P2 cars?
So just because we haven't announced any P2 cars for ALMS this season doesn't mean there aren't P2 cars. So don't take that as a defensive statement, John, at all. There will be P2 cars racing at Sebring. I think, and it's something that Scott and I have been talking about for quite some time, and we talked about it with Ed and Jim as well. I think what we're seeing is we're seeing something that we may have created our own issue, honestly, with the P2s because our PC class has been so successful. It's quite the opposite of what's happening in Europe. The PC car didn't take off over there, it took off here. I think guys that would run a P2 car are probably running PC cars instead. The truth of the matter is since we had the announcement for the class structure starting in 14, there has been a number of teams and car manufacturers that I've had conversations with about 2014, about P2 cars, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. We didn't want people sitting by. I think the situation that's going on, and I don't want to be in any way a negative Nancy, but I don't think the P2 category in Europe is really as strong as it sounds like it might be. I think it's very, very difficult. I feel like the economic conditions in Europe are kind of falling behind us. They're coming later than what we had to deal with. And I think P2 is very strong still, but I think there are guys who are waiting to see some of the changes of what we do to make sure that those two cars are together. So P2 has always been a struggle for us here. It's not a secret. Since the rules changed to cost cap, it's not like we've had 100 cars. It's always been difficult for us. And I think it's no less difficult, but I have very, very high hopes for going forward as to what it's going to look like. And I'm not going to say definitively where we're at and what's coming, but when the entry list comes out, you'll see there are P2 cars here at Sebring. We're working every day to try to make sure that those guys stay with us for the full season. But it's a difficult task right now. And I think we're in good position for 14 to have both cars competing against each other.
As a follow-up to that, if I may, can we anticipate seeing, what many of us probably dislike about the DP, which is the spec, head around that car? I mean, it's spec racing. The tire, will we see that start to relax to where there's truly some innovation going in the car, and what we've come to expect from prototype? When you say prototype, you show up here and some spaceship drops out every season, and it's awesome.
I think, to answer your question, I think what we've done and what we talked about when we did the announcement at Daytona was that we've set a path for 3 years. We've said, all right, for 13, 14, and 15, the equipment that you have is the equipment you're going to run. It's a conversation that I had twice last night with 2 different people in the paddock when I was wandering around. It doesn't mean that 2016 is going to be exactly the same as 2014 and 15. We need to do something that brought everybody together, gave us a stable platform for a number of years to get to where we think we want to be. So for me, it was a very conscious decision among the group that made a decision on this that said, look, GT racing is not settled. There's FIA GT3 cars, there's GTE cars, everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of meetings that are happening right now called GT convergence meetings that the FIA and the ACO put together. I got a seat on that board. I'm sitting there, we're talking about that. GT rules probably can change and are going to change in 2016. Prototype rules are new in 14. I'm interested to see where they go with energy allocation. Is it going to be just Audi and Toyota and Porsche, or is it going to be somebody else? So I think we took a very conservative approach. And honestly, without sounding arrogant, I think we were very smart about what we're doing. We took what we had, we're as successful and inclusive as we can be for a period of time, so we're stable. We do the merge, we all get together, we all compete, and then we start looking at what everybody else in the world is doing. And we make a decision off of that. And, the DP car is a good car. It really is. It's got great horsepower. It needs some aerodynamic help. But when it races against a P2 car in 2014, I think your eyes are going to be viewing it a little bit differently. And what it does is it gives us the ability to do that and then look at 16 and say, okay, do we keep doing this or do we do something different? And if the 2014 P1 regulations and the regulations that the ACO come up with aren't as successful as they want to be, then I guess we create our own and we start anew. And we build something that is covers two bases. It gets manufacturers interested, and it's a car that is at a reasonable price that a privateer can race. And that's what we need. You know, that's what we really need to go forward. So it's not a plan right now, but I think our conservative approach is a good one. And I think everybody needs to know that, you know, we announced a class structure for 3 years, 13, 14, 15. We're still looking at 16. We still have our eyes very, very wide open. We're going to do the right thing, I promise. I mean, we have to. We got one really good shot at this. So I don't want, you know, the problem, I guess I'm trying to say, don't lock it in forever, because it's not forever. It's just to get us through the initial merge and to be inclusive.
Tammy?
From the outside looking in.
Sorry, guys. I just ate lunch. I'm feeling good.
Need some water after that?
Decaf.
From the outside, the last couple of years, both on Grand Am and ALMS, has kind of been about survival and getting through the tough economy and everything else. But this year at Daytona and then coming into here, it seems like there's this resurgence of manufacturer interest and involvement. From your side of things, do you think the merger has sparked some of that again?
I would completely agree with you on the level of energy at Daytona. There was a real buzz in the air, and the short answer to your question is yes. The manufacturer inquiries that we've received over the last several months, some of which have opened up with, we didn't know which direction to go in, and as a result, we didn't do anything. But now that this has been aligned under one element, it's time to get serious, and that's why we're here. I've lost count of the number of meetings that we've attended. You know, Scott and I have been in Daytona. It sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to say weekly, because sometimes it's been twice. Bad planning, and you just had to be there, so you go again. So in the last several months, there have been many meetings. We have one at Daytona, which, you know, it's, from our perspective as a sanctioning body, to your point, that's, you know, never really thrived, but always been out there scratching and kicking for everything we could get. You know, you have a room full of manufacturers that are all expressing a desire to become involved, and it's like you want to pinch yourself. You know, is this really happening? So I attribute it, maybe not 100%, but 90+ to the merger. I want to go back and add one thing. Some in this room may assume that because right now there isn't a clear indication of P2 involvement, that in the quiet moments in Daytona there may be quiet satisfaction that that Daytona prototype is in fact going to become the default platform. Not the case. As concerned and as motivated as we are in this room to make sure that there's P2 involvement in that unified category, that same interest and same genuine desire is shared by the folks in Daytona. And I just want to make sure that that's clear. There's no quiet agenda here that's being played out. It's quite the opposite. We absolutely want these two cars to mix it up together.
Other questions?
I don't think it's so much the matter of is it a P2 or a Daytona prototype. The philosophical difference is that in Grand Am, what isn't compulsory is forbidden. What made ALMS so great is that if it wasn't forbidden, it was permitted. Are we going to see teams penalized for making their cars faster, as happened at the Rolex this year?
I've got an answer, but because you're going into the technical area, I'm going to let the other Scott cover that. No pressure. We want to put a time limit on it.
Really? You're saying that?
There you go. Next question.
I don't know that you're, and I'm not being defensive. I don't know that your statement about a philosophical difference exactly exists. Any guy who writes a rule book always says if it's not in the rule book, it's forbidden. So the ALMS is the same way, IMSA is the same way about that. I think what you're talking about is some of the technological advancement that's been permitted in IMSA that maybe hasn't been in Grand Am because the regulations are different, right? We allowed a hybrid on a prototype last year. You're not going to see that in Grand Am this year. It doesn't mean that that's not going to happen in the future. I'm not going to promise it, but we're in the process of blending and going through and trying to figure out what we're doing, the things that make sense. The things that we've seen, honestly, are things that create fan interest. The whole idea of doing this is to grow it, to get more fans, to get everybody interested in sports car racing. So I don't think the past, I'm sorry, this is a horrible quote, I don't think the past is any indication of future results. Sounds like I'm selling you a 401k. But that's the fact. So, I think we need to keep preconceived notions in the back of our minds and not look at it going forward.
We hear the other Scott's answer.
Jim France is a businessman, and he's invested tremendously in bringing these two series together. And the market is never wrong. Regardless of the industry and the business you're talking about, the market dictates who survives and who doesn't. And the market will determine the best solution for these prototypes. It's a combination of manufacturer interest, fan interest, competitor interest, and everything that Scott has said is absolutely correct. We made a decision based on what is required to bring these two diverse entities together and give our teams and give our manufacturers and everybody involved the stability they need to work through this settlement. I've said it more times than I can count. Where we start is not the ultimate destination, especially when it comes to the prototype category. And that's something that I think it's easy to lose sight of as we sit here in February of 2013. But there are differences in these two platforms now. I've never been more enthusiastic about the future here. And I've sat in quiet conversation and I've sat in open public forum type meetings. And the things coming out of Jim France's mouth, Ed Bennett's mouth, Richard Buck's, are all in line with what you're hearing from us today. There's not two versions of this story with different spins on it. We're all speaking the same. So I hope that's an answer.
I think the underlying theme here is let's all give peace a chance.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, thanks so much. I think we're.
I wanted to ask, in the ALMS, we've had the luxury and privilege of racing in fabulous venues. Now, two of our most fabulous on either end of the schedule are under new management, or what's happening there? Who runs Sebring? Who runs Road Atlanta?
Happy to report that rock solid, same staffing, same, I'm still responsible for them as I was in the Panos Motorsports Group role. Jeff Lee up at Road Atlanta, Trey Stevenson here, and all of the team that they surround themselves with are absolutely in place with no plans to change whatsoever. And the only thing that they'll benefit from is the same thing that we're all benefiting from, and that's unprecedented resources that are now at our disposal. It's remarkable when you look at what's contained within the office building and across the street in Daytona. It's good for everybody.
Good. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thanks a bunch as always. Been a pleasure to hear about what's coming down the road, not just in the future, but also in the future, I guess, in another month and a half, or another month, I guess, so when we all reassemble back here at Sebring.
Appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.